Let's go, girls.
Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things that you couldn't believe.
Let's go. It is Women Talking Football. We are the women, a pair of producers. My name is Ashley Pickle. I'm the executive producer of Dave Campbell's Texas Football and Dave Campbell's Texan Live. Sitting over there, running the show, making us sound as well as we can. It is associate producer, Mallory Hartley. Do you want to give this talking thing a try?
Yeah. Let's do it.
We're doing great.
I think the problem with mine is that I keep like coughing. So my voice does not have time to heal.
Yeah.
Because I keep coughing. So no matter how much rest I get, I keep coughing. So
So here we are.
My voice will not get better. So
this is our home now. This is where we live. This is how we sound ever.
Exactly.
It's episode 2. We did episode 1 last Friday, and the reason we did that was because we wanted to do a kind of a TFT takeover, grow our brand a little bit, let people know from when they usually tune into Texas Football Today, our daily live show. But we'll be here on Thursdays from here on out. Thursdays, 2 o'clock every single week. Women Talking Football with myself and Mallory Hartley. And we'll go ahead and go through what we're going to do today. First off, we were just at THSCA coaching school. It's the massive coaching clinic here in the state of Texas. And it's not, for those of you who don't know too, and we'll get into this a little bit more in a second, but it's not just football coaches. It's coaches for every single sport. Like there's swimming and diving seminars. So there were over 16,000 coaches down in San Antonio. We were there hanging out with them all week, Saturday through Tuesday. So we're going to talk for the first 15 minutes, just kind of break that down. We spent a lot of time there. It's one of our favorite events throughout the year. So we'll get into all the shenanigans that was THSCA coaching school. Then we told you we were going to get straight into the X's and O's of football, and we are starting that this week. So if you listen to our first episode, we broke down how we at Dave Campbell's Texas Football break down the state of Texas, and we do that in 21 different regions across the state. Each week we will be going through a different region, and how we're going to do it, instead of like starting west and trying to make our way through like the regions of region 1, 2, 3, and then 4 down in South Texas, we're just going to do it in alphabetical order. We feel like that's a little bit more fun. We tend to stay on like the highway system a lot around here. So we just put them in alphabetical order, and we're going to go through. So that way this week, we're going to start off in our Austin region, the A. The only region that starts with an A, if you were wondering. I was a little
didn't know that.
Shocked by that, I guess. I don't know. I felt like there would have been more common, but yeah, Austin is the only A. So that made it really easy to decide what we're doing first. But we're going to have Thomas Jones from the Austin American-Statesman join us to give us his kind of insight into that. We want to get the local flavor of that because we cover 1,400 teams. So a lot of times it's good to have a focus on it.
I'm not good at math, but that's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a big number. And then in the back half of the show, after we talk to Thomas, we'll see how his notes compared to ours. And Mallory and I will give kind of an insight into how we feel about the 5-1-2 heading into the 2022 season.
Should we start off with coaching school?
We did that thing.
Yeah, we did that.
That's kind of why we sound like this.
Yeah, we did a lot, and I think, let's just go right into our favorite part of coaching school. We, I guess this was Monday morning, I believe, we went to an event called Muffins and Mimosas with the THSCWA, which is
Don't forget the dub.
Yeah, don't forget the dub, Texas High School Coaches Wives Association. So they have events all throughout the year, and it's basically just a big event where coaches' wives will gather, and it's kind of like a support system. If you can imagine, being a coach's wife is probably extremely difficult. I mean, working long hours, going pretty much the whole day, especially during the season, without seeing their husband. So having that support system, having other ladies around you that are going through the exact same thing as you are, I think that is an absolutely genius idea. And it's been around since the, I think, mid-'80s I saw. So this has been going on for a long time. We, last week on our premiere of Women Talking Football, we got to talk to the president, Miss Karen Story of the event. So we actually did not get to meet her at the event because she was super busy. And we
saw her up on the stage.
We did. We saw her make her speech up on the stage. She did her thing. She was good. We didn't get to meet her, unfortunately, but definitely got to see her. And they also had a guest speaker there who was her name is Debbie McGuire. A lot of you know Coach Joey McGuire, the new head Texas Tech football coach.
And if you don't become a Dave Campbell's Texas Football subscriber, he's on our cover.
Yeah, he is actually on our. Is that who's on our cover?
That guy.
That guy.
The guy in the red.
Yes,
I've heard of him.
If you haven't been on Twitter lately, you should, because Texas Tech's all over it. But no, Miss McGuire, she got up there and kind of basically just broke down her experience with being a coach's wife, and now she's the coach's wife of a head Power 5 football coach, and so I just can't even imagine what she's going through, but I thought one of the most interesting parts of her entire speech was every time she referred to herself or her husband Joey McGuire, she referred to them as we.
Yep.
Yeah, she sees them as a team, and I think that was one of the biggest messages that everybody in the room took away from that event was you should see you and your husband as a team, and I think everything is just easier after that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That was the thing that like there's a lot of times when you're talking about a couple like that and like a strong foundation that you can see the we in a couple of things like, oh, we went and did this, or we went. No, like we're talking about like when she, the one thing that stuck in my brain was when she would say, when we took the Baylor job.
Yes,
when we took the Texas Tech job, and the we wasn't just her and him, it was also their son Garrett, who's not the head coach, a coach with the Carolina Panthers squad, and then their daughter, who is a fashion designer up in New York. So you look at FBS head coaching and fashion designing in New York, you don't see a lot of similarities, but their paths obviously cross so much. And she said that they made the decision as a family. And it was cool when we were at that Muffins and Mimosas listening. Every time she would talk, it almost felt like we were in a church sermon. Yeah. Because everyone's head, like she would get to a point and everyone's head would nod at the same time. Like I was waiting for a amen. That's how it felt. And it was cool to see. And we see women working in sports broadcasting that we're like, oh man, taking in information. How did you get here? We asked Dr. Elza that on episode 1. Yeah. How did you end up here? Tell me your backstory, because that's typically the best way that you learn these things. It was really cool to see the coaches' wives it could have been a coach's wife where this is their husband's first ever job and he's primarily teaching middle school PE, but he gets to be on the sidelines during the varsity game. And it was just like, looking at her like, this is so cool. Like that could be me one day, it's relatable, but it gives people a hope of like, hey, if we become a team, like the sky's the limit. Yeah, exactly. Well, and she started off with, she told their entire story all the way from when McGuire was an assistant at Crowley, I believe it was, all the way up until now. And yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of those women in there, they're dating the quarterback's coach at a 3A school or something. But you can still relate to them in that aspect of you've got to see yourself as a team or you're not gonna succeed. And I really liked the part that Debbie said. She said that when McGuire was offered the Texas Tech job, he didn't say anything until he FaceTimed his entire family. Yep. They got onto a group call because they're not all together. His daughter went to Texas Tech. She actually attended there. I think she graduated a couple years ago, but now she, like you said, lives in New York as a major fashion designer, and her son is an assistant at Carolina for NFL. And he did not speak a word of it until he was able to get on FaceTime with all of them together and then tell them. And then Debbie was like, yep. And then that's when we made the decision that we were going to take the Texas Tech head coaching job. So I don't know. I thought it was we couldn't really relate to the actual story, but it really just opened your eyes into what a coach's wife actually
is like. And that's something that we want to dive into too. We're going to have coaches' wives on here as well at some point, because we want to dig even deeper into that and, their experiences and just get to know what their lives are really like behind their husbands.
The part that I thought was most funny was Debbie was talking about how she was supposed to, when they were going through the interview process here at Tech, when they were she was supposed to be going to the Carolina Panthers game.
Oh, that's
that
right.
weekend.
That's right.
So she was going to go watch her son. Like, she tries to go out a couple times a year and get to go watch a Panthers game. And I think she said they were playing the Patriots, but because
it was a big game, whatever it was.
Yeah,
she didn't want to miss it.
And she knew that this was coming, and Coach McGuire was like, no, you can go ahead and go. And she said, I had this gut feeling like, I need to stay. This is the right thing. And she said, for those of you who don't know, the Texas Tech athletic director is Kirby Hocutt.
Yeah.
And when she goes, I don't remember this at all. Maybe I blacked out. I don't know. But she said he's coming down the escalators at the airport. The McGuires are there to meet him. And Miss Debbie said she just goes, wreck him. And she was like, Joey kind of turned and looked at her like, are you okay? And apparently Coach Hocutt, Mr. Hocutt, Dr. Hocutt, I would assume, was like, that's the moment I knew. I mean, you want to talk about marketing yourself, about branding for the university. But when you're lucky enough to know those two, you can totally tell that that absolutely happened. She's like, I think I just kind of blacked out for a moment, but I just wreck him. It's like,
and it's funny.
Hell yeah.
Exactly. And it's when you look at both of them on the stage, they both have very different ways of talking to people, right? He is very comfortable in front of a crowd.
He could be a politician, man.
Oh my gosh, he can sell you a meat on a stick if you wanted to. Like, he could sell you anything. But she's a little bit more timid on the mic, But the way that those two both command a room, I mean, once they get up there, all eyes are on them. There's no phones. You want to listen. You want to be engaged in the conversation. So I'm going to say, I think Texas Tech hit a home run with these two. 110%. I mean, they are doing a fantastic job of building their brand and marketing for the team. And yeah, I'm excited for football season already to watch those two dominate up there.
No kidding. And so, thank you to the Texas High School Wives Association for letting us crash there. I mean, we literally just walked in.
We did. We were like, hey guys,
hi, we're here.
We're gonna steal a seat.
we're not a coach's wife, but we're here. So that was a ton of fun. And then the rest of coaching school was great too. It's a marathon I feel like most people know how it works, but we set up in the exhibitors hall, and it's just a massive room. And if you've been to literally any sort of convention where everyone has tents and they're passing out goodies or they're doing whatever. But we have a booth and we sit there and we do a ton of interviews. We had so many, and it's funny because people come up, some of our Bally friends came up to us. And they have a room upstairs where they set up a very professional looking studio. They get a ton of unbelievable content. So they're really the only other people doing interviews there like us. A lot of the rest of them are writers and stuff that'll go to the press conferences. But they set up and they go, how many interviews have y'all done? And we're like, well, at this point we're pushing 60, and they're kind of looking at us like, you crazy people. And I'm like, well, welcome to Dave Campbell's.
And one of those interviews that we do is we have those coaches guess who the celebrity is. So not super formal, but
So yeah, we have those, like the 57. I think we're at 57. Those were like literal sit down 5 to 10 minute interviews. Yeah. Then we also have the bit set that we started when we went to coaching school last year. So just a ton of goofy content and stuff. But they come up and they're like, "Do y'all schedule all these out?" And we're like, Nah, dude. When you have Matt Stepp and Greg Tepper standing there, people just walk up and are like, "Hey, where's my interview?"
You know who the most impressed person was that Stepp and Tepper just know? Craven. He keeps talking about it. He's like, I don't understand. Come on, Michael. I don't understand how those two do it. Like, I don't have enough information enough space in my head to know all that information. And I can relate to that. But Craven just kept going on and on and on about it. Yeah, they are. They really are.
I had to look. We're sitting there, and I had to sit there and look at Matt Stepp, and I was like, no more. Like,
we did.
I'm putting my foot down
to do that.
No more interviews. And the reason being is, like, it's great. We love all the content. we got to turn around and edit all this stuff, man.
Oh,
and
yeah,
thank
we
goodness,
do.
shout out to our intern, Ryan Baldwin. He's out there doing the bit set stuff right
Yeah.
now, and you've been cranking through the coaches' interviews and everything. But I was like, brother, you got to chill. And so then the guy, being Matt Stepp and who he is, excuse me, he goes, we see him, and he's like, okay, Pickle, okay. And then all of a sudden I turn
goes to
around
get another
and he's just
interview.
sitting at the bit set, like just sitting at the bit set scanning. And I'm like, this guy's tweaking. Like
I
he's
know.
actually going to start like,
Yeah, well,
I
Tepper,
need interviews. And I was like, he's sick.
Yeah.
He's sick in the head. We love you, Step, and glad you made it back safe to Canada.
yeah, and one more thing, Tepper came back from emceeing an event at coaching school, and he's just standing there, and he's like, going like this and stuff, and he's like,
Fidgeting.
I got to do an interview. I have to do it. I'm like, dude, we're on day 2. Like we're already halfway through
Yeah,
day 2.
stop.
How do you want to do another interview? Like I don't get it. It's nuts.
So yeah, if you question mine and Mallory's role here at DCTF, like in general, coaching school kind of really sums that up of just like reeling in the nonsense. We like to add to the nonsense, but also a part of that is like keeping the nonsense to like a reasonable manner. But we had a great time out there. Over 16,000 coaches. It is unbelievable. If you're in the media, you got to get out there and go. Seriously, it is just, content gold. So we had a fantastic time with that, and appreciate everyone at the THSCA, the UIL for including us in everything. And I mean, there's no one that does it better than the Texas High School Coaches Association. So we appreciate all of them having us out. We are Women Talking Football, our new show here on Dave Campbell's Texas Football, WTF for short. Ashley Pickle, Mallory Hartley. We appreciate y'all joining us here for episode 2. So we told you in episode 1 that a big goal for this specific show is going to be to show loves to literally every single region of this state. We break them at Dave Campbell's Texas Football into 21 different regions. Each episode, we're going to go through one specific region. So we show the love to every single corner of the state. And we figured we're going to go in alphabetical order. So what does that mean? Well, A starts first, so that would be the Austin area. And when you talk about the Austin area, there's a gentleman that you absolutely cannot leave out of the conversation, and that is the community sports editor here for the Austin American-Statesman, and that is Mr. Thomas Jones. Thomas, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are y'all doing? You survived coaching school. That's a win.
Barely.
6 to say. We've got some battle scars, but ultimately we are here. Well, Thomas, we really appreciate you hopping on, and obviously we're huge fans of your work here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football. I know you know Ish and Craven pretty well.
Yeah.
But a big thing that we want to give the people the opportunity to do when they come on the show is to tell us a little bit about yourself. When I'm looking for content, I always like reading people's content that I know. And so can you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch into who you are and how you got over there to the Statesman?
Oh gosh, I've been writing in some form or fashion. I've been covering sports here for like 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's some of the smaller papers in the area, online, and at the Statesman. So I've lived in Austin for 30 something years. I moved down here when I was still pretty young. So I've seen it grow.
Mm-hmm.
We used to not have football teams playing for a state championship. That's for sure. And now it's like every single year, we get a couple of teams up there at least.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, when we were driving back from San Antonio, I grew up kind of around the Austin area. And Ish,
yeah, you're a Llano kid, right?
I am. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Llano. Ish obviously grew up in Austin. We were just, driving down 35, it's like, oh my God.
There's a new building.
There's a new building every time you drive through there.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But like you said, I want to talk about, you are a guy that we basically, we're going to see at AT&T Stadium every single year, it seems like, from the Lake Travis 5-peat to what Westlake has done the past 3 years to Liberty Hill being a dominating program, Austin LBJ. We'll get into kind of those specifics, but how has it been for you to year in and year out know that you're covering Texas high school football literally until the final week of December?
Oh, it's been fun. I mean, knowing that you have teams that can win it all in this state, especially at, the 6A level, which,
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, it's just amazing what Lake Travis did 10 years ago, the run that Westlake is on right now. It's fun, and you get to plan stuff, and you get an excuse not to go, Christmas shopping early. Hey, honey, I got to work. I can't do it.
That's fantastic.
I'm sure Mrs. Jones loves hearing that.
Yeah, and she doesn't buy a word of that. She knows better.
Oh, absolutely not. A smart lady.
Yeah.
So you brought it up. We talked about Westlake. We talked about Lake Travis. There are those fundamental programs that when you hear 512, when you hear Austin area, you think of those programs. I want to go back to last year when you got to watch a program in Austin LBJ make a historic run, not only for an Austin program, for inner city programs across the state of Texas as a whole. Obviously, that's been a big story we've told here with Sock being on the cover and all of that. But what was it like for you to get to watch the run that LBJ had in the 2021 season last year?
It was really inspiring. For the reality of high school football is for the last generation, it's been dominated by the schools that have a lot of means to support those kids. The Westlakes, the South Lake Carrolls, the Cadies. So to see a team like LBJ, and they're from East Austin. I live in East Austin. Those kids didn't grow up on Easy Street. Go take a look at their practice fields to see what they deal with every day. Nothing comes easy for those kids. So to see those guys get to state championship, to see South Oak Cliff win a state championship, it really is inspiring. And to know how hard these kids got to work, because a lot of them, they're working kids too. They got jobs.
Yeah.
They're helping support the families.
Absolutely, and it was fun to watch, and we got to know Coach Finner pretty well, so I'm sure that was very special for the entire Austin community. Shifting our focus now into 2022 as we talk to Thomas Jones from the Austin American-Statesman. If you had to choose one big storyline that you think that anyone across the state, not just Austin area folks, but anyone across the state, when they think of Austin heading into 2022, what's the storyline that you think is going to be pretty prevalent heading into this season?
Wow, it's hard. I know people get a little tired of Westlake, but the fact is they've won 3 in a row. They're trying to get a 4-peat in the state's highest classification, and they're trying to do it after losing not only a Hall of Fame coach in Todd Dodge, who retired, but also Cade Klubnik, who's now at Clemson. He's been the best quarterback in the state the past 2 years. Can they do that? Can they retain what they've been doing with the new coach and Tony Salazar? Who was there, who's been Todd's right-hand man as a defensive coordinator. Can they maintain their dominance? And it's until they show that they cannot, until someone knocks them off, that's still the dominant story in the Austin area.
Absolutely, and we've gotten so used to seeing those players, exactly like you mentioned with Cade Klubnik, of knowing the it guys around the Austin area, and it seems like a lot of them have left. Even with LBJ, it seems like they keep, getting off those D1 prospects year in and year out. Who are the players? And I think that especially want to talk to you about one of them in Austin Novosad over there at Dripping Springs. But what are some big name players that folks around the state should be paying attention to that will absolutely be playing at the D1 level?
Oh, wow. I mean, you mentioned Austin Novosad. Our quarterback class in the Austin area is really good. But the running backs. You have a guy at Round Rock, Stony Point, Cam Cook can go anywhere he wants. There's a kid at Maynard, Quentin Joyner, who's going to USC. There's a kid you mentioned LBJ, Cedric Alexander. He may be one of the most overlooked running backs in the state, in my opinion. And he's going to carry a heavy load because they lost some kids. The running back class is so deep in the Austin area. And the defensive line play down here is good. Yeah. And then, some of the small towns in our area like LaGrange, they have some of the top players. It's a really, really deep class. And if you're in the Austin area, do yourself a favor, go see LaGrange play. They have a kid named Bravion Rogers who's going to play defensive back at the next level, but he does everything for LaGrange. And they have some other D1 guys, and this is a 4A school.
Right, I feel like a lot of people think of Austin as only 6A and 5A, but it really is crazy when you start getting down there. And we even kind of group in like the Columbus area and stuff like that. So a lot of good small school. And that kind of brings me into the next question of districts around there. There's obviously the Austin ISD and all that stuff, but then there's a couple. I mean, you look at 12-6A and you have a pair of teams going to play kind of more in that Temple area, Harker Heights area. What district are you most excited to watch play out this year?
Yeah, and realignment really threw some curveballs at the Austin area. So not only do you have Weiss and Maynard who are move-ups to 6A, they may have a good run, but you look at what happened in 5A. I mean, you have, who is it, College Station and A&M Consolidated,
Mm-hmm.
and these are two of the best programs in the state. They're coming over to our 11-5A D1 district, which features, heavyweights like Cedar Park and Georgetown and Hendrickson, schools in the Austin area that we're all used to. But now we got these, these Aggie intruders, man, coming over from Brazos Valley. So it's going to be interesting. And, I think those two are probably the favorite. And for a Cedar Park person, this is a team that's used to playing for state. They're like, wait, you thinking we're going to be third behind a couple of these, outside of the Austin area teams? It's like,
Well,
that's
guys.
a really interesting district. Yeah. 11-5A D1. It's fascinating to me.
That is good to know, and that's funny. And if there's anything that'll get folks in the city of Austin a little bit upset, it is those CSTAT intruders heading up. All right, if I put sports gun to your head here and say I need you to tell me which game in the Austin area right now on July 21st that you're looking most forward to seeing, who would you say?
Oh, wow. I mean, gosh. I don't want to be predictable and say Westlake and Lake Travis because everybody's going to say that. But there's some non-district games that are really interesting. And you look at LBJ is essentially, they have like 4A D2 numbers basically.
Right.
And they're going to have Weiss on the schedule. I think they have Round Rock. I need to double check that. But, and then anytime LBJ and Manor hook up and they're playing again, that's a great battle. And again, we were talking about running backs earlier. You want Cedric Alexander at LBJ and Quentin Joyner at Manor. To go to that game, and those two schools are only about 5 miles apart. To go to that game, that's going to be fun. It's going to be a treat, especially if you like running backs.
And finally, the tough-hitting questions here coming from Dave Campbell's Texas Football. I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you have to say one of your favorite memories throughout your time at the Austin American-Statesman down there, like you said, you've been in the Austin area for about 30 years now. If you had to pinpoint one of your favorite memories covering 512 football, what would you say it is?
Wow. Favorite memories. There's some memorable moments that aren't necessarily my favorite, but I would say I remember Nick Foles when he played for Westlake in 06. Really good team. And they were playing South Lake Carroll when Todd Dodge coached Carroll. And that game, at the end of the game, Westlake failed to score. They lost by about 10 or 12 or something. And remembering Nick Foles' expression, it just looked like the world ended, And this is a guy who will go on to win a Super Bowl MVP. But to see that passion for that kid at that moment, that really stood out. I mean, the emotions on Nick Foles' face is one of the memories I have about how much this game means to kids growing up. They live and breathe it. And I'll never forget that look on his face.
And that is exactly why you and I are doing exactly what we're doing now. It's Thomas Jones, the community sports editor for the Austin American-Statesman. You can follow him on Twitter at Thomas Jones AAS. Thomas, man, really appreciate you taking the time to hop on with us. And, we'll be seeing you definitely at AT&T Stadium, if not before then.
Absolutely. Hey, good luck with the program, and I'll see y'all down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. There he goes. Thomas Jones, again, the community sports editor from the Austin American-Statesman, joining us on WTF. Again, follow him at Thomas Jones AAS for all of your 512 needs. And he's a guy he lives and breathes it. And you can hear it, too, just like when he starts talking about Nick Foles.
He's got so much passion.
He's got passion for what he does. And anybody that you talk to, I can't say that I know Thomas too well on a personal level. But, man, you ask Ish and Craven and people like that who genuinely know this guy, and they're like, there is not a better person or a better human that you can talk to than Thomas Jones. So very much appreciate his insight down there in the Austin area. Make sure to follow along with him.
Craven worked with him, right? At the Austin American-Statesman? That's what I thought, too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they've been buddies for quite a long time, because Craven used to be at down in Taylor, too, at the Taylor Daily News.
That's right.
So all those 512 people get to know each other. So appreciate him hopping on with us. Now, we spent a lot of time hearing Thomas's thoughts on the 512, and I'm going to let you know that a lot of our thoughts are the same as a lot of his thoughts, but we do have a couple of things that we're going to go through here and break down some 512 football. And we'll go ahead and start off with, we have 65 teams in the state of Texas that we consider in the Austin region. And these are just UIL. We did not pull private school numbers. So 65 UIL teams that we consider in our Austin region. This is a crazy stat. And we were doing the math on this. I went through and it looked at our magazine, which, by the way, become a Dave Campbell's Texas Football subscriber because you can get it right here. I have all my tabs for classifications. You can tell that we've been studying up because even though we put it together, we still use it as a point of reference. But I went through and I looked at our preseason rankings in the 63rd edition of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. There are Austin schools from 6A down to 2A Division 1. There is a 1A school. They are not ranked, but I looked at our preseason rankings. How we break it up at Dave Campbell's Texas Football is 6A. We list the top 50 because we don't split those into Division 1 and Division 2 until playoffs times. On all of the other ones, we do the top 25 from each division. So 5A will have 5A Division 1, 5A Division 2. It equals 50, but 25 from each different division. There are 18 of those 65 teams that are ranked in the Dave Campbell's Texas Football / Associated Press preseason rankings. That's 27.69%. Nice. That's a lot. That's a very high percentage of teams. If you're talking from a per capita, 65 teams, 18 of them are preseason ranked in the top 25, basically. Well, that's wild.
And switching gears to college a little bit, that's super exciting for the Texas Longhorns because a big pull to some of those kids is, you get to stay home and play for coming up an SEC program. So hearing that all of these teams are ranked in the Austin area, that's super exciting for the Longhorns.
It really is. And I mean, just as a whole, we talk a lot about, DFW has a lot of really good talent. Houston has a lot of really good talent. I mean, it's scattered across the state, but when you want to talk about, and I'm going to go down and pull these numbers every single week. I don't have all of them for all 21 regions yet. We'll continue to do that, but I would be dumbfounded to find one that has basically that high from the preseason rankings alone. So 27.69 percent of the Austin area teams are ranked in the Dave Campbell's Associated Press rankings. So we're going to go ahead and we'll show you which of those teams there are. Let's start off with Class 6A, the big boys around town. Number 1, Austin Westlake. We've talked about them a lot, going what now would be a four-peat with the new head coach Tony Salazar. You have Lake Travis, Hank Carter and his squad in the same district at number 7. Austin Vandergrift, the Vipers, been a big one all season long. Number 34, Round Rock. Do not sleep on Round Rock. We'll talk about them a little bit later. Number 37, Pflugerville Weiss. And number 41 was superstar quarterback Austin Novosad in Dripping Springs. Moving on to the 5A classifications, we have Cedar Park at number 21 in 5A Division 1, going down to 5A Division 2. The Panthers out of Liberty Hill coming in at number 3. Number 8, Leander Rouse. Coach Mann has been building up a program that is looking to be on the cusp this year. And then the defending the reigning 4A Division 1 state champs in Austin LBJ now moved up to 5A Division 2. Had they had stayed down a classification, I would bet that the ranking would be a little bit higher for them, but they are a 4A Division 1 team opting to play up. Their enrollment did not grow, opting to play up in that 5A Division 2 classification. So they're going to have a shortage of guys, but if anyone can do it, it'll be Coach Jamal Finner and his squad coming in at number 12 in 5A Division 2. Moving on to the 4A classification in the Austin area here. This one, you want to talk about arguing about geography. Let me blow up our own spot here. I am a hill country girl. I grew up in Llano, Texas. Actually grew up in Kingsland, Texas, where that's where our house was, still is. That's only about 20 minutes from Marble Falls. So us putting Marble Falls in there has me even going,
I don't know about that.
We might be stretching it a little bit. But according to the Dave Campbell spreadsheet, which is the Bible in which I oblige to, Marble Falls coming in at number 20 in 4A Division 1. Looking at 4A Division 2, number 7, the Wimberley Texans, a historic program that just continues to win in and out there in the much further south greater Austin area. Then you have one right there in the heart of it in number 15, Lago Vista, and then rounding it out with LaGrange. Obviously, Thomas Jones, a huge fan of LaGrange. Interested to hear about that. So maybe they will be moving up in those rankings as the season starts. Now, going down into, we combined the 3A and 2A classifications because there's only one from each of them. 3A Division 1, number 8 Columbus definitely put themselves on the mark last year. They have quite a few studs on that roster. We'll talk about that. 3A Division 2, number 16 is Lexington, and then 2A Division 1, our final ranking in 2A Division 1, number 25, Flatonia. So out of the 65 total teams that we have listed in our Austin region, those are the 18 programs that are ranked heading into the 2022 season by Dave Campbell's Texas Football and the Associated Press, the official rankings of note for Texas high school football. Now, let's take it even further than that. So we're going to talk about some players to watch in the Austin region. And with this, we're going to throw it over to Mallory Hartley. She's our player breakdown expert.
Oh, you know me.
Cruton expert queen at her throne.
I feel like I kind of just get thrown in. They're like, hey, you can be an expert on that, right? I'm like, well, I'll try. So here we go. Let's go ahead and throw up our players to watch in the Austin region. We'll start off. His name sounds familiar because we've already talked about him 20 times during this podcast.
And we're going to keep doing
it. Dripping Springs quarterback Austin Novosad. He is probably one of the best passers in the country right now. We saw him at 7-on-7. And yeah, that he lives up to that hype right there. He's going to be a really good player. And if I can say, if we can put out a Mr. Texas football watch list, I think this dude is definitely going to be on it. He's currently committed to Baylor.
The Baylor staff better stay on him like a fly on poop, man.
Aranda better be giving him some NIL deals or helping him get some NIL deals here. But he's on flip watch, definitely. He's got offers left and right. Texas A&M and Ohio State definitely up there on his radar.
Yeah, so an Elite 11 guy who, when we were watching him, like we watched him play last year on Texan Live, and I was like, he looks good. I don't know what he did this offseason, but he looks, elite. That kid can not only throw, you see his passes and you're like, oh, holy crap.
You're like, I don't want to be catching.
No. Y'all got it.
I don't want to be a DB here. I'm playing against him. Up next, we have Austin Westlake, defensive lineman Colton Vosick. He is pretty prominent in the Westlake world. He's returning from last year. He's got offers from Oregon, Texas, Clemson, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, you name it. I've got some of his stats from last year, and I'm just going to read them off because it's absolutely incredible.
Preseason All-State guy for us.
Yeah. This dude recorded 56 tackles, including 16 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, 1 pass breakup, and 2 forced fumbles. That was just last season.
Light
no
work.
Big deal. I could do that.
No
right?
big deal.
You could do that.
Dude, 10 sacks is the thing that is most
sure.
impressive there, and he's a guy that's real quick off the line. When you start watching his tape, he's got great build to him, but he really does. He's very quick. I like his first step better than anything, and that's exactly what equates to those 10 sacks. But if you thought that Austin Westlake's defense is going away, they just happen to promote the best defensive mastermind in to their head coach. So he's a monster off the edge.
Up next, we got Austin Vandegrift, offensive lineman, Ian Reed. Funny enough, we talked to Drew Sanders, the head coach at Austin Vandegrift at coaching school, and one of the first players he mentioned, it was Ian Reed. This dude is unbelievable. He's a bully on the field.
Offensive line really kind of works like a certain dominance. Go out there, just wreck everybody. Yeah. He's impressive. He's a good, huge kid too.
I pulled up some of his tape before this just to watch him. He's throwing dudes left and right all over the field, man. He's
one of those that he sticks out his index finger and the poor defensive lineman is just flying 5 yards back.
Yeah, this dude's unbelievable. He's a Clemson commit, 6'6", 300 pounds. And what we learned, this is super interesting. Coach Sanders over there mentioned that he plays rugby and he carries the ball in rugby.
Because why not?
Because why not put that dude in the with the ball?
An immovable force.
Yeah. Up next, we got Manor running back Quentin Joyner. You may not have heard his name before. That's because he's to us, he's a sleeper running back. Yeah, this dude's going to be really good next year, but definitely probably one of the best running backs in the Austin area. Definitely one that you need to keep your eye on next season.
I was going to say, when it comes to Austin area football, specifically when you start looking at the teams that are always on the top, I think that we don't think of Austin as the primary spot for running backs per se. And in a recent, I'm talking recent history here. Yes. I'm not talking back in the day history. I'm talking recent history.
Because typically it's quarterbacks.
You have Cade Klubnik. Yes. You at Lake Travis, you have Jaden Greathouse, or no, that's also Westlake. But when you start going through all the people that they have, and then LBJ, I mean, it's pass heavy offense. In the recent history, we have seen a lot of air raid attacks. We've seen a lot of stud wide receivers and stud quarterbacks. So when you start talking about running back, the first person that needs to start coming to your mind is Quentin Joyner, because this is a kid that, you might think he might be a little bit undersized. But the other thing, when you talk about Manor football, shout out Ishmael Johnson, this is a team that if they have the guy, they can move. They've got the assisting players around him that can do some damage, but Quentin Joyner will be the guy that moves the offense for the Mustangs, and I'm very, very excited. If this is a name that you're not familiar with, get familiar with it, because you're going to be hearing it a lot come the 2022 season. Yeah.
Up next, Austin LBJ running back Cedric Alexander was a big difference maker in the state championship last year, although they did not win. That dude's unbelievable. We got up close and personal with him. I was on the Austin LBJ sideline for that game. I was getting film for our DCTF All Access piece, and he's a really big dude. He's coming back for his senior season. I got a couple of stats of his from last year. He carried the ball 254 times, rushing for over 2,204 yards, and a simple 28 touchdowns.
Yeah, he was old reliable for them.
Yeah,
when you're looking at someone running for 2,000 yards, like you've got the guy that you needed, and he was impressive. But I really think that what he did was give that LBJ team stability when they needed it the most, and I think that you even saw that in the state championship game. Obviously, that game did not go how they wanted it to go.
Definitely.
A lot of fumbles, some of those, take that to who you will.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things. When he keeps his hands on the ball, he's extremely slippery. He's hard to bring down, and so I think that he'll make a big thing for a LBJ team that lost a lot to graduation this past year.
Yeah. And lastly, on our list of players to watch, we've got Columbus offensive lineman Oscar Ramirez. We didn't want to leave out any of the smaller schools, but this dude is going to definitely be a difference maker on this team. He's a big guy, definitely one that they are happy is coming back for another year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And when you get down, that's in the 3 Division I classification. Again, we mentioned Columbus coming in as our number 8 team in 3 Division I. They were a team that really lit up last year.
Yeah.
They were one that any week that we were in, we were talking about Columbus when it came to 3 Division I. But when you start to get, we've talked a lot about 6A ball here. When you start to get down to those 3A levels, having sheer size and a guy that can move his feet, it's invaluable.
It's a difference maker.
It really is. And if you find a quarterback that can throw, or Columbus is always
back.
Yep, I was just going to say Columbus always has some good running backs, and so they've really done a good job of that, and he's going to be a key piece that they need to stay healthy to be able to execute the offense that they want to run down there at Columbus.
Yep. So there you go. Those are your players to watch in the Austin region. I think that's probably going to be one of my most favorite segments because I like digging down into those players. And
Grev Powers Jr.
Dude, let me call Powers real quick. Hey, man, I can help you. No, but no, it's really interesting to see, and especially because I'm such a college football guru. I like to see the ones that are committed to these big name schools or even like the smaller schools. I think it's just kind of fun. It's super interesting.
Absolutely. All right, there was players to watch. Moving on in our breakdown of the Austin region here on WTF. I can't even remember what I told you we were talking about next. To be honest, that's why I'm looking at the screen.
We're
storylines.
We're going to talk a little bit about Westlake.
All right, storyline number 1, and we've mentioned this a lot, so I won't spend too much time on this, but New Shap, same Westlake. That is kind of the big question here. You have Tony Salazar, obviously. Coach Todd Dodge rode off into the sunset after grabbing state championship number 3 in a row. Tony Salazar, we have been beating the drum about him forever. One, an unbelievable human, but literally might be the best defensive mastermind that we have seen in recent history in the state of Texas. The guy knows exactly what he's doing. Westlake's defense has been great year in and year out. It's one thing for him to move up. He's a guy that's been around that program for a long time. What really will be the key is finding a quarterback. That Westlake defense will look the same. Their offense, they still have Jaden Greathouse committed to Notre Dame. I mean, he's an unbelievable player. They have all the key pieces that they need. It seems like they just reload. There's no need for actual restocking. Finding that quarterback, replacing Cade Klubnik, will be something that'll be interesting, and that'll be a big task on the offensive coordinator because you have your defensive coordinator stepping in to be that guy. So being able to solidify that, we saw them at state 7-on-7. They got booted early in the consolation bracket. Not saying that Westlake is falling off by any stretch of the means, but they do have to. That is the big question. Can they solve that hole at quarterback? If they can do that, guess what? The likelihood of us seeing Westlake back in AT&T Stadium on December 17th, very likely. But until then, that will be the question heading into this season.
And I think if we had to dig just a little bit deeper, I think their offensive line may need a little bit of help too. Now it's Westlake. They don't really need any help, per se. But if we were going to bring up a second topic of discussion with this team, it's going to be at that offensive line. They lost big Connor Robertson to Texas, and they also lost Bray Lynch to Indiana, two of their biggest offensive linemen. They got a couple of guys coming back, but definitely one thing to watch is going to be if they can fill those big guys on the offensive line.
110%. So there's some more Westlake talk because let's face it, you cannot talk about Austin without talking about Westlake.
You can't.
Up next on our storylines to follow, a pair of players in the District 12 6A bloodbath. So what we mean by this is if you take a look at District 12 6A, let's just go through this gauntlet for a second. You're pairing kind of Waco area teams with Brazos Valley and Austin. So it's just this conglomerate. Temple, Harker Heights, who has definitely been on the come up the past couple of years. Bryan down there in the College Station area. You have Hutto, who they have their new head coach after Coach Brad LaPlante stepped up into the athletic director only role. And then Pflugerville Weiss. We've talked about them time and time again. They're a program down there in the greater Austin area, North Austin and Pflugerville, that has really put Pflugerville ISD on the map for the past couple of years. They seem to have a very consistent stream of recruits coming through there, a very well executed offense. But Hutto and Pflugerville Weiss obviously being the pair of players in that bloodbath of a district. Definitely keep your eye on that. That's some really good football that really stretches along that greater stretch of 35 right there. Hutto, I have a lot of questions about still. I will say that I think stability of having a home stadium is going to help them a lot. I was going to say, they got that new stadium, yeah. They do. It got delayed a lot. COVID put a lot into that. Weather. So I think that they're really looking for a little bit of stability. You've got a new coach coming in. You have, kind of a new scheme coming in. But they've got some players going through there. It'll be interesting to see. And if Hutto's going to strike at any point in time, now is the time for them to do it because reading in the tea leaves, and I have no official information on this, but it seems like the reason that Coach Brad LaPlante had moved up into that athletic director role is because Hutto will likely be opening another school here soon. Right. So if Hutto's going to strike, they need to strike now with all the players that they have before they split across the road. But Weiss definitely will have a chance. If you're looking at that district as a whole, I would say Weiss, Temple, and Harker Heights are the ones that you really are going to want to follow along. Bryan losing a quarterback last year after losing coach's kid. But 12-6-8, very interested to see that, and that's kind of the district that I'm very interested in heading down into the Austin area. And then I think we had one more storyline to follow. Realignment shakeups at the top. We mentioned one of these, the aforementioned Austin LBJ Jaguars, the reigning, I guess, okay, they were contenders in the state championship against Stephenville last year. So we mentioned that they're losing a lot of players, but they did that the year before last. You'll remember that Austin LBJ team from 2020 had a pair of defensive backs on it that were D1 guys. They lost those guys. It didn't matter. Just reload. Coach Finner has done an unbelievable job with that program. But they are opting to play up into 5A Division II reason being for that travel, a big portion of that. It's kind of easier for them to be able, with where they're located, to stay in that conglomerate of Austin ISD type of schools. So instead of going for a Division I and doing all that travel again, they decided to, even with their enrollment of, it's in the 800s, so they were already fairly small for 4A Division I, to be honest with you. So bumping up is going to be a big challenge for them. But you heard Thomas Jones talk about that gauntlet that they've scheduled in the off season. If you're going to beat the best, you got to play the best. And Coach Finner knows that better than anyone. And talk about a motivator to get his team to go out there and play. You witnessed it firsthand last time. Yeah.
Well, I'm interested to see how you feel about this too, because you went to Llano High School, so you guys were traveling quite a bit for these games. I went to Arlington High School. I think the farthest we traveled was to Pascal in Fort Worth, like 25 minutes. Do you think that really makes a massive difference in how your season's playing out? Or do you think Austin LBJ is going to feel that difference?
This is very two-tiered here. Growing up in a small country town, you're just used to that because that's the way it is. I mean, we had to drive 30 minutes to get to a Walmart, so it's kind of like you're kind of used to that.
Gotcha.
With Austin LBJ, theirs is more of, they're an inner city program. Some lack of funding could be there when it comes to gases. A big thing happening right now, and this is where we'll end this conversation after this. But gas prices too are huge right now. That's a lot of driving
for sure.
So with them, it's more about looking at the climate of what you're in. It's more about looking at your funding that you're going to be bringing in with bonds and everything like that. So theirs is more opting to save a little bit of money for their program. But it does depend on, a lot of it is geography of where you're at and what you're used to doing and how your regular life is consistent. So, for each their own, but interested to see Austin LBJ. The other one, the big one, Dripping Springs. We've talked about their quarterback, Austin Novosad, a lot. We will continue to talk about him. They come in at number 41 in our 6A rankings. And you might be saying, well, how do you have one of the best quarterbacks in the state and you're only at that? Well, it's because they're moving up a classification to, they were 5A Division 1, going to go ahead. Or were they 5A Division 2?
I think they were 5A Division 1.
Okay, and then they move up, but they're in the 6A classification now, and that's going to make things just a little bit more interesting. Anytime that you move up, we talk about that. How well will their numbers turn out? Because that's another big thing. Just because a school enrollment number might be big does not mean that the enrollment of the athletic department itself is very big. Dripping Springs is fine; they're a big school, but it will be interesting to see how that ends up shaking out. It's not like they're getting easy competition either. No. So, interested to see that, but some big movement of teams that we have really high hopes for bumping up a classification. Those would probably be the biggest two, or the largest two.
And this team too, Dripping Springs, they're used to winning. Like they're averaging almost 10 wins a season, dating back to 2016. So this team is used to winning. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep doing that. And Coach Zimmerman over there too, we talked to him at coaching school, and he seems pretty high on his guys. So
As he should be. And so that's kind of one of those things. But when you look at the rankings, you go, well, why are they down there at 41? First off, look at the 40 other teams in front of them. We have a plethora of good programs around here, if you haven't noticed, in the great state of Texas.
Prove us wrong, man. Prove us wrong. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. And that's one of those things. When a team moves up to the largest classification, there is always that you're going to be knocked down a little bit because you need to get in there, swing your bat with the big boys, and let's see what you got. So very excited to see that. I believe that is all for our Austin regional breakdown. Woo. So there you go. It is the first regional breakdown that we have done here on Women Talking Football. Like we said, we're going to continue to do this for the next 21 weeks. It'll actually be 22 of them. I kind of combined together, and I'll explain that. It'll actually be next week. But we're going to be going alphabetical order. So if you want to take a look back at our regional breakdowns that we do and figure out which one's coming next, well, just what comes after A. So, really appreciate Thomas Jones hopping on to talk about that, and we'll continue to do that every week, too. Want to give a shout-out to all the coaches that came up to us at coaching school. Again, we didn't mention this earlier, but in support of the show, it was overwhelming how much positive reaction we got. It seemed like every coach that came up said, hey, congratulations on the new podcast. That is awesome. If you have women wanting to get in sports, we highly recommend share the podcast with them. We would love to grow the audience, but we appreciate all you for tuning in. That'll do it for our first regional outlook.
Join us next Thursday.
Yeah.
We're gonna be here
Thursday.
We're not going away. Like, we're gonna be here.
You're
we're gonna be
stuck with
live
us.
You're stuck with us. We're gonna be live every Thursday at 2 p.m. So please become an avid listener of us. And then also, we appreciate feedback too. Like, we are always looking for constructive criticism. Please keep it nice in the comments and everything. But yeah, we're always looking for feedback. What do you guys like? What do you guys don't like? What do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of? Yeah, just let us know. You can reply to us on Twitter, Facebook, whatever.
Absolutely. So that'll do it for us today. Episode 2 of Women Talking Football. Thank you for tuning in. Oh, also one quick note. We will be getting this up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I don't believe that happened last week, but we are working with our web fancy
designer
people to get that done.
Yeah,
so as soon
stuff.
as that is done, we will be up on there too. But for now, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to follow us at DCTF. See all of our work on TexasFootball.com, and we'll see you next Thursday to break down the big country in Wichita Falls.